right, welcome back again to Live Wire. I'm Jared Moore. I am joined in the studio via Zoom by Brenda Golden, and we're going to be talking about a rallying march in support of ICWA that's going to be happening this Friday at the Capitol Complex. So without further ado, Ms. Golden, thank you so much for joining us again today on the program. And tell us a little bit about this march and kind of what the issues are involved with it.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Yes, I'm coming to you in regard to the recent attack on the Indian Child Welfare Act and our perceptions that our Mvskoke Creek Nation Department is not doing enough to uphold the Indian Child Welfare Act and to strengthen it. So that's what our march and rally is about on Friday.
Okay, and is there like a main group that's going to be hosting this, or is this just like everybody that wants to participate?
Well, this started with a letter we wrote to the editor, Hope Craig Corlew from the California Mvskoke Association, and Deidre Thompson, who was running for council, and I and Kara Medina, who can't participate right now due to personal issues. We all became concerned when the Fifth Court of Appeals upheld the unconstitutionality of the Native Americans getting preference for placement and adoption in state courts under the Indian Child Welfare Act. And that's since been kicked up to the Supreme Court of the United States to determine if that's constitutional as not being a discriminatory act. And it is my position, and I hope others too, that upholding the Indian Child Welfare Act is a major part of our tribal sovereignty to determine what we do with our own children, and to not fight for the Indian Child Welfare Act at this point, especially the placement preferences of keeping our families together, is very concerning to us. And one of my biggest frustrations is that the Mvskoke Creek Nation signed off last year when the McGirt ruling was fresh. They signed off on a contract with the state of Oklahoma to let the state keep our kids in their system, the Department of Human Services. And that is a very adversarial process to our families in a lot of situations, as workers don't understand our cultural issues. They don't understand the type of problems that our Native people have in our communities to meet stringent, guidelines to get their kids back. It's just a lot of issues that there's reasons why the Indian Child Welfare Act was passed to begin with.
Right.
And for our tribe to just let the state of Oklahoma have our kids and then not stand up for our families weakens the Indian Child Welfare Act. How can we fight for it if we're not even using it?
Right. So what could the administration do more? Or that seems to be the thing, is that the lack of response is what this is about, right? So if you were going to have, and I guess I should go ahead and ask too, has any group sat down with the principal chief and had a discussion about this? And if so, what did he say, or has anything like that happened yet?
I don't believe anything like that has happened. I personally, I guess people don't. I personally don't have a group per se that is leading this. It's concerned citizens.
Right.
So I have alerted people in the administration to my concerns. They're very well aware of my frustration at the lack of our tribal nation taking the lead in protecting our children, and for taking custody of our own children and determining where our own children should be. And in the McGirt case, our tribal nation officials went to the Supreme Court and said on the record everything's great with Oklahoma Department of Human Services. We promise we won't change a thing. We'll just leave them in their care if you'll let us have the McGirt ruling. And since that time, if there was even any hands-on before, it's totally hands-off now since they made that argument. And it's very frustrating to me when I try to represent clients, because I am an attorney that works in this field quite often, that our nation takes a hands-off approach. Our workers, I'm talking about, our Indian child welfare workers take a hands-off approach to providing any services, offering assistance, helping our citizens try to get their children back into their custody. That's what I think is the crux of what our rally is about.
I see.
On Friday.
So if you're... Sorry, go ahead.
So I'm just saying, we're starting out at the Children and Family Services Administration building. We're gathering there first. We're asking for people who have experienced frustration that I just described about not getting assistance or help to come stand with us. And those that are concerned about the overturning of the constitutionality of ICWA should come stand with us. We need our tribe to enter an amicus brief on that case, as other tribes are doing, as other tribes are doing as soon as possible before the Supreme Court hears it. But, how can you do that when you stood before the Supreme Court and said, hey, everything's great, just let the state keep them. I'm also very, very concerned, that I and the other persons who are putting this on are very concerned that when I had posted something about this issue on Facebook, and you can go back and look, there were many families that said that they had experienced the same issue that I was talking about, that there's so much more that our Indian Child Welfare Department could be doing to assist our families, to get services, to help with transportation problems, giving them vouchers for the, to get services, being that linkage. I mean, I'm talking about, it appears that they go to court, they enter an appearance on behalf of the tribe to monitor the case, and then they just stand up and agree with everything the Department of Human Services child welfare workers say and do, and it's frustrating to fight against that. How can I fight for my Indian family when their own tribe won't fight for them? Right.
So it sounds like those are some recommendations that you would give to the administration. Do you think that this is a situation where it's from the top of the food chain down or from the bottom up? Because you were mentioning it's the crux of it is the advocates and the frontline workers don't seem to be pursuing things as robustly as everyone would like. Is that a problem where it's like the lower level workers are just not getting enough training or whatever, or is it something where it's like the leadership is telling them whatever? Like, in your opinion, what do you think is the cause of it, though?
I think there are several causes. Yes, it's a top-down problem, meaning that if we actually put our children and families first, there would be funds in the budget to provide this type of services I've just talked about, to add caseworkers to help, do those things. I don't think that they have enough right now. And the last I heard last year, they were talking about expanding by 17 workers by this year. I don't know that that's happened. And, so the top down means also the chief and the council providing that funding and then the support and training, like you said. Okay. It's really, I don't know if it's with the current leadership over in that department, but this has been going on in this manner for at least the last 10 years I've been, that this type system, if you will, broken system. And so the administration has to work with council to get that funding in place to do those things. And I thought that was what they had agreed to last year. They said, when we're signing this contract with the state of Oklahoma, it's only temporary. We're going to put funding over here and in the budget, and I don't know that that's happened to get those kids back in our care. Why can't we transfer cases to tribal court? I've tried several times in the last year to transfer a case to tribal court, and our own attorney general files an objection to. Can you believe that our own nation objects to a transfer to the court, to tribal court?
I'm curious about that myself. I would. We do have a question that popped up in chat. I'm going to ask the question in just a second, but why? What were the grounds that was listed on those objections? Seems strange.
Well, the ground was that we have a contract in place with the state of Oklahoma Department of Human Services to give custody to them, and by agreement we've allowed them to have jurisdiction over our children. So therefore, that agreement that contract takes precedence over our right to transfer to tribal court.
I see.
Which is a violation of the Indian Child Welfare Act, because in the act it says anytime a parent requests to have the case transferred to tribal court, there has to be good cause, and the tribal court has to decline the transfer. So why is our AG jumping in here to object?
That seems strange to me, that whole process. Is there anything that legally, is there a challenge that could be mounted against that? Like could you go beyond the AG, maybe to the Supreme Court or something?
I have thought of that. I hope we have some listeners who are as concerned as I am about our tribe doing that, and maybe can reach out to me and we can brainstorm on how to get that before our Supreme Court to give us an opinion on that. I would love to have someone collaborate or help me with that.
We've got a question in the chat here, and I'm going to toss it over to you because you're a lawyer and I'm not, and you probably have a better explanation of it. But here's the question. Could you explain the rationale or grounds that the lower court's ruling used to determine the preference is unconstitutional? Is it being framed as an unconstitutional racial preference?
That is exactly what it's being framed as.
Okay.
In Bracking versus Holland, which was formerly the Bracking case, I think most people know it by, it is arguing that non-Native families are denied the placement of Native children, and that's a racial bias, and which would be unconstitutional. And that's the crux of the Indian Child Welfare Act, is that you're supposed to place children with Native families so that they can maintain their contacts with the tribe, with their traditions and culture. That's the whole crux of it. So if you take that part away, you're going to lose a lot of ground with the Indian Child Welfare Act.
Yeah, and just from hearing that, I haven't read the briefs or anything on that case, but it seems to me they're going to have a problem the further up the food chain in the court system they go, because the federal government, designates Native American tribes as political groups, so it's like, how is that argument going to work when you get into the federal court system? I'm assuming that it would get to that at some point, you would assume the Supreme Court's going to look at it from that, within that logic, right?
Right. Well, I guess that's why they're going to look at the difference at the Supreme Court is, as you said, right. Are we still political, or under Martinez, or are we,
right.
Is this a racial preference? So yeah.
Apart from the legal battles that are happening, what else could you recommend? You kind of outlined a few things there with the vouchers and other things that the Department of Child Welfare, or it's Child Welfare and Human Services, I think is what it is, at the Creek Nation. Is that right? And that they could hand out the vouchers or do those things and maybe advocate more. It sounds like there's a systemic problem here somewhere, though, because you've also got the AG who's not transferring things into the courts. Let's say that you march and this is the plan, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys are going to march over to the chief's office. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So if you guys, let's say that you guys get into chief's office, or chief comes out and has a dialogue with you, what would be like the top 3 things, or the top 1 thing you would say to him? Say, Chief, we've got to do this now.
Chief, we've got to start transitioning cases as soon as possible from state courts to tribal courts, and which means all aspects of that case gets transferred from caseworkers to services to also before a tribal judge. That's what happens. That's got to be our priority, is getting our own jurisdiction exerted over our own children and families. Number one. The second thing is for our nation's workers to start standing up and fighting for our families to stay together, instead of rubber stamping whatever the Department of Human Services says. Number 2.
Okay.
A whole change of, is that called change of mind, a frame of mind, or
right.
Assert some opinions, assert some assistance. And then the third thing, of course, would be the types of assistance that I talked about. Those would be the top 3 things. Put some money into services, and that can be creative. It doesn't have to just be counseling and therapy. I mean, our people out here have problems with transportation. Making sure that the worker calls on them and says, hey, do you have transportation to go visit your kid on their regular schedule? Now, they're leaving this up to the Department of Human Services right now, but why can't our caseworkers be assertive and help our families? Right. I have clients who have had to miss their visits with their children because the caseworker is making them come to wherever. Maybe our caseworkers could do the transporting if they're going to leave the case in state court. They call up and they're like, oh, my car broke down, or I have a flat. Okay, we'll come take you to visit your kid. Is one way. Things like that. Be creative. Some of our people don't have internet or phone access. They have these pay-as-you-go things that. Yeah. And so then that's a ding in state court when their caseworker can't contact them because their phone is out. We can assist with something like that so that they can communicate.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to get creative beyond but also get them to their counseling, get them to their therapies, get them to their doctor's appointments if that's required in their service plan.
Right. We've got another question that's popped up here. And before I ask it, though, because it's asking specifics about the contract with the state that the tribe did. Have you seen that contract? Have you read any of the specifics? Okay, great. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the question. And the question is, was a sovereignty protection clause not included in that contract with the state, which is a common practice and protocol when entering into contracts with outside entities? So I think he's talking about a waiver of sovereign immunity, maybe?
I don't think that's the question. What they did was they entered into concurrent jurisdiction, which is not. So it's not a matter. Tribal sovereign immunity applies to when you're getting sued for something, and so I'd have to go look, but I don't think that was even addressed. But it is very common in all contracts that there is a clause in there that the Mvskoke Creek Nation doesn't waive their sovereignty. But this was a contract to agree that we would allow them to have jurisdiction over our children and families. So I don't think it was. Sorry, go ahead. I don't think it was that pronounced because it was more about jurisdiction and not sovereignty.
I have a question. How does this affect the criminal side of everything? Let's say you have scenarios where if this carries on, if you have a native child who has citizenship in a tribe who is put with a non-native family, and then something happens like abuse or something like that, wouldn't the federal government have to be involved in the prosecution of that, or the tribe? Because if the police are called, could they even do anything?
And that's a good question because you are correct. The state and the city cannot prosecute our Native people if a crime happened on tribal land, and that includes the victim. And so it would, depending on whether it was a major crime or a lower misdemeanor,
Right.
whether it would be federal or state. And
well,
that's a good question.
Some of those types of child abuse and other things is like those are federal level things, I believe. But that would be my worry about the situation. Is so you have a court ruling that is placing Native children with non-Native families, and it's basically putting them in a situation where it'd be very hard to get a prosecution on someone who's abusing the child, because if they're also way far out of the reservation jurisdiction or something like that, like they would who could even do the arrest and collect the evidence would be a major problem there. It's like kind of like this. It sounds like this ruling is like really sculpting a situation that's really bad for Native children.
Well, the fact is that it is happening, not with Native children, of course, but it is happening where there are crimes that are being committed, and city, state, county police can't do anything except wait for the light horse to come, or call them, and so they're stretched pretty thin. Oops. So the light horse is stretched pretty thin with that being so expanded now, and there are times that if the police just have to leave the premises and refer it to light horse.
So. And I know that the National Council, a couple of months ago, they passed legislation to create the Light Horse Police Commission, and they're slowly getting those seats filled. Is that something that you might consider on this issue? This issue as well, is to maybe get in touch with that police commission and say, hey, this is also an issue that you guys might want to look at, because I know they're trying to restructure things with that commission. So.
Well, that's a great idea. I'm sure that's been thought of.
Well, I don't know. Just like what we're talking about now. We would assume that a lot of this stuff has been dealt with.
Well, our biggest concern, of course, is the lack of our nation to exert their authority under the Indian Child Welfare Act. Because, as I said, if you don't use it, you lose it, and this is a really high-profile time for the Indian Child Welfare Act being under attack at the Supreme Court, and we want our tribe to step up and show that we use it, we need it, and it does help our people stay together.
There was one other thing I was going to ask. We've had a question pop up. It's kind of I would say I can answer this one real quick to Eleanor. There is a process for citizens to propose legislation and bring legislation to the National Council. It's in the code. If you go to the Creek Supreme Court website, you can go through the code there. I don't recall off the top of my head exactly where in the code that is, and it might be in the Constitution. I think it's in the Constitution as well. So,
I think it's in the Constitution as well, too.
So,
a referendum.
Yeah, so if you want to go to the Creek Supreme Court and take a look at the Constitution, just read through it, you'll see that there is a section in there about citizens bringing a referendum, so check that out. It's out there. We're in a political season now. Have you guys talked to any of the candidates, about this issue? Because it seems to be it's like there's going to be the National Council needs to get involved. What's the word been on like with that?
Well, I had talked to several of them in the past. I talked to current council members as well about my concerns. Some of them have attempted to bring it before the council. They've reported back to me that they're in talks with other council members. There are a few candidates that have a lot of experience with the Indian Child Welfare Act, and I'm not advocating for anyone. I'm just stating what their resume says.
Right.
Samuel Bonnie Deere had extensive Indian Child Welfare Act experience, and then Leonard Gouge, who's currently in the runoff in Tulsa County, also. I believe he has like 31 years experience with the Indian Child Welfare Act. And I hope that the other council members will see this and act on the needs that I've, kind of asked for. If we could just start transferring, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to. I think the big concern last year when they signed this contract, which by the way, on page 6 does have a no waiver of sovereign immunity. So whoever asked that.
All right.
That if we just had a plan to gradually absorb these cases into our system, and I don't know if that's a district court issue.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a children family services issue? That's why we need to sit down, I guess, with chief or who, and determine who's responsible for that attrition plan, if you will. Because I think they would need to work together anyway, even after, during the whole process. But not to accept any cases at all is just astounding to me. That's how we exert our sovereignty, by making decisions about our own people's general welfare, and to just allow that to be passed off to a state agency is adversarial to the Indian Child Welfare Act.
Right. Well, I think, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think is important associated with this? If people want to get involved with this rally, where can they go?
I cannot say the actual name of the group. It's the Hope Craig Corlew group.
Okay.
We have an event page on Facebook. Not everybody's on Facebook, so they're welcome to call me at 918-879-5013. That's again 918-879-5013. If they would like details, we are going to have a speaker, like a microphone stand. We'd like to hear from citizens that have, and so that they can talk to the administration about some of their experiences. I have clients that this is impacted, but to hear it directly from our own citizens would make a great impact. So if you are a citizen and have had a frustration like I have talked about in this broadcast, you can contact me or just show up on Friday morning at 11 a.m. before the Children and Family Services building.
Okay. And Eleanor in the chat is asking about a question she asked earlier. I don't think that question actually got into the chat, Eleanor. If you could repost it real quick, I'll try to read it, but I don't see anything about special relationships in the YouTube chat here. So, but thanks so much for joining us today. I'll be out at the protest too. We're getting some footage of whatever happens, and thanks for coming on. I'm going to wait just a couple of seconds. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on? I know we've kind of hit every aspect of it. In the future, do you think this is really that we're going to have to expand our programs here significantly to help deal with this issue? Is this going to be something where there's got to be a substantial investment in child welfare services here?
I believe so, because the testimony last year, when they were contemplating this new contract, was that there were over 300 families that would fall under the jurisdiction of the Mvskoke Creek Nation to administer and absorb, and they just couldn't do it at that time. So, I don't see anything wrong with concurrent jurisdiction if we don't have the resources. What I have a problem with is the hands-off attitude that the tribe has taken.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean just wash your hands of our families and forget about them. But this has been a systemic issue for years and years and years, so we need to fix it. It's time. The time is now.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on the program today, and sorry if we couldn't get to your question there, Eleanor. I still don't see anything, and we've been on for a while now, so we're going to wrap up and keep in touch with us, and we'll look forward to hearing anything we can from you, Miss Golden, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Okay, we'll see you Friday at 11.
Sure
Thank
thing.
you again. Mado.
Mado.